Shut the fuck up!
Alright, so it's time for another world's famous retro video game review. Okay, so maybe they're not so world famous, but motherfucking dream. Today's retro video game review is on Shadow of Memories, or Shadow of Destiny as it's known in the States. It was originally released for the PS2 back in 2001, but since it's seen a few ports, like to Xbox in Europe, and Windows in 2002, and then again on the PlayStation Portable back in 2009. Now, I am borrowing this game from one of my friends who lent it to me, but the video game review itself that you're seeing is done from an emulator for recording purposes. Now I'll give a brief summary of the story before I begin the review itself. The objective of Shadow of Destiny is to guide the character Ike Kush, I think, or Ike Kush, through a fictional German town named Lebensbaum, which means life's tree, and he travels through time to prevent his own murders, and eventually, of course, unmask his murderer. Then a magic goddess character gives you something called a digipad that allows you to travel through time so that you can actually prevent your murders. And eventually, through preventing your murders time and time again, you find out who the murderer is and kind of the true story of this game. This game's a bit of a mindfuck, you might say. It's got some interesting elements in it. It involves different timelines, and, like, honestly, I think it's got quite a bit of plot holes, but but it was an interesting story, and kind of divulging everything was pretty interesting. There is a total of, I want to say, 8 endings? Yeah, there's 8 endings. The last 2 you can't get until you've completed the first 6. And playing through it my first time, I got through ending A, but then later on I watched the other endings from YouTube videos. So without further ado, I will give my retro game review. If you haven't watched my previous game review, I score the game with 1 through 10, with each number getting a point from 0, 0.5, or 1. So the first one we're grading it on is visuals. This was one of the first games released on the PS2. Like, it came out the year after, but it was still like one of the first games when they were really getting the graphics engine down. And honestly, a lot of the graphics remind me very much of Resident Evil, but then there's still like a lot of goofy stuff. Like, if you watch them running, it's pretty ridiculous down the street. So for visuals, I gave it a 0.5. I didn't think it was anything too spectacular. I mean, you could tell they tried with some stuff, but really, I've seen a lot better on PS2. For number 2, we have music, and I agree with that, a clear 1. Like, if you hear that music from the startup, is very excellent music to go along with this game. I loved it. It was very eerie. Helped to set the tone of the game. For 3, we have gameplay and controls. For this, I gave it a 0.5. I mean, I don't feel like it's anything, too different from other games. There was some kind of goofy stuff, and honestly, the controls were a Japanese setup where you're pressing circle instead of the X button for yes and the X button for no. However, I'm not sure exactly what was up, but for some reason when I was playing on the PS2, it was extremely dark and I had no way of changing the brightness. But whenever I played it back again later on the emulator itself, everything looked a lot crisper and brighter. So I'm not sure exactly what was up, if that was a problem with the game and maybe the emulators are running a newer version like the PSP version, or what exactly was going on there. But yeah, for gameplay and controls, I rated it a 0.5. For 4, which is innovation, I rated this game a 1. There's not any other game really on the PS2 that I can remember really doing this, and it reminded me of a newer game. Well, I mean, not newer, but fairly newer, Steins Gate as well. So I gave it a 1. For number 5, we have story, and for the story, I gave it a 1. Like I said, the story has some plot holes, but it was interesting enough, and it's pretty much the whole reason you're playing. So I gotta give it that 1. For number 6, we have customization, and I mean, it's early PS2 game. There wasn't really any customizing for your character or anything. I could consider the story a customization. You do get to choose things, even though they don't always, change the outcome so much. But there was options to do stuff. I mean, clearly there's 8 different endings, so I gave it the 0.5 in this case. Okay, for number 7, graded on likability, which, I mean, I kind of like this, but at the same time, I can't see myself really going back and playing it again. Like I said, I only did the one ending, and then I watched the rest on YouTube. I didn't care to really play it too many more times, so I'm giving it a 0.5 in this. Like I said, it was good. It wasn't like I never want to play it again, but at the same time, I'm not going to go out of my way to play it again either. For number 8, we have replayability, and with there being 8 different endings and different things to do kind of in between in each of the stories, I gave it the 1. For number 9, we have characters, and for the characters, I'm actually giving this game a 0. No one was particularly all that great. Nobody stood out as being anything other than exactly what they needed to be for the story to go along. So, I mean, I'm gonna give this a 0 on characters. And then now for number 10, we have how good is it on the system? Like I said, this was an early game on the PS2, so clearly you don't really expect a whole lot out of it. As you could tell, it had its ups and downs throughout it. It's a very good story, but overall, I wouldn't end up playing this one, again. And really, I think that, there's quite a few other better adventure games out there. But at the same time, this has, gotten a cult following. People love the shit out of this game and, suggest people to play it. Obviously, since my friend let me borrow it to play it myself. So, for number 10 on how good it is on the system, I'm giving it the 0.5 on this. And so, scoring up those numbers, we got a 6.5 out of 10. I mean, if you've never played this game before, I would suggest, going out and grabbing it if you can get it for pretty cheap, which you probably can. PS2 games go fairly cheap nowadays. But, I mean, don't go, too far out of your way to get it either. Because you might just end up like me where you play through it the one time. It's not a very long game. It only has 8 chapters, and each chapter you can actually get through in less than an hour. The real shine of this game is playing through the other endings and getting them all. But you have to be pretty invested in doing that without the game itself actually giving you reason to. So, like I said, 6.5 out of 10. It's good, but it's not that good. Anyways, that is my retro game review for Shadows of Destiny, or just Shadow of Destiny. Be sure to like and comment. Feel free to subscribe. That would be nice. And most importantly, don't forget to take care of yourselves.